Hello, MotoAmerica fans. Welcome to this latest edition of Off Track with Carruthers and Bice. I am Sean Bice, and I'm joined by our communications manager, Paul Carruthers. And in the middle, we have the legend himself, Kevin Schwantz, brand 34. Kevin, it's great to have you on. Especially we're at COTA. We did 2 podcasts here, so this is kind of a bonus one. So I think this is running after the weekend, so we're not going to talk about the racing that we're about to see this weekend. We'll talk about other things with Kevin, and we've got a lot of questions to ask him. So Kevin, I want to ask you this to start with. So the track has been I want to ask you about COTA. The track has been interesting because of some of the work that they've had to do. Some of it's because cars go on it, obviously. But there's always this issue about the instability of the ground. And I know they repaved some stuff recently. I don't know if it's because of that. But I heard from, I don't even know who the source was, but I heard you actually wanted the track to be somewhere else in Austin.
At his house.
Yeah, closer to home. No, there were, I think there was another option where it could have been, but the problem, well, not the problem, but why it's where it is Mr. Epstein and a group owned this property ahead of time. And I think the story I've heard was it was set to become a neighborhood, and that the city of Elroy said, no, we're not ready for a big neighborhood here yet. Okay, well, how about this? We'll build a racetrack. Well, I guess they couldn't say yes or no to a racetrack, but anyway, it's here. And yeah, one of the issues that they had, one of the expenses and one of the lengths of getting this track built was that they had to dig down 8 feet, the complete length of the racetrack, all the way the width of the racetrack, to try and put stable soil underneath it to stop, because it's on a big clay base here that just moves all the time. I mean, the access roads, any of the streets you drive on coming in, if you come in, whatever the one is that I drove in this morning,
out back there, right?
If you come in off Kellum and go to Credentials, that road's like you could, a couple more months you could run a Supercross there. I mean, it's getting some pretty big stuff in it, but yeah, and it's just a maintenance issue. They did just repave, because I was here for the World Endurance. Valentino was here driving, so came out and watched him on Saturday and Sunday. And the World Endurance guys said the new stuff's really nice. A little bit low on grip early on. Once they got some rubber down, it seemed like it was a lot better.
Why did they repave it? Surface, or is it that rippling?
Well, I think it's the surface. When it ripples, I think the surface becomes pretty unstable and it starts breaking up and cracking and things like that. So I don't honestly know. I don't keep up with what happens here on a day-to-day basis. Right. So this is mere speculation.
Okay. I got another question about the layout of the track. And we had Matthew Skoltz on recently, and he kind of brought something up. The fact that some of the turns, turn 1 and a couple of the other turns, they come back on themselves a little bit. And it favors torque out of a corner a lot of times. You can't carry some corner speed in some of those turns. So, and by virtue of that, it seems like people think this is a Ducati track. This layout, did that ever occur to you, like the way some of these turns are and how that it would affect, work with certain bikes?
No, it didn't. Because when it first got a Grand Prix on it, it was a Honda track. Oh, this track suits the Hondas. It suits the Hondas. It's got a long straightaway, dead stop corner coming onto it. The Hondas are the fastest. I guess you got to be on the right bike at the right time, because it looks like it's Ducati across the board, MotoGP and MotoAmerica now. But just gives you an idea where you might need to work on things if you're one of the manufacturers that's not running at the front or not dominating and not winning.
All right, I've got a question that goes back to saying you saw Valentino here. Is he, at those World Endurance Championship car races, is he a big deal, or does he kind of get to be just a guy?
No, they go out and sign autographs, and he's got a longer line than almost all the pro guys.
Wow.
There's always a line outside the back of the garage, similar to MotoGP, 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 people that are standing there waiting. As soon as he shows his face, another 20 come running. He's still a pretty big deal, and it's funny because I think the team told me that in Italy it's still the same, a lot of places, but Spain and France is kind of he gets to be more of a normal person at those events. But he says there's still some like this where, the line out front of the garage was like,
wow.
There's 5 or 6 people in line for most of the guys. So Yeah, and he seems to really be enjoying himself. He's not in a hypercar, which is the top class in the series that he races, but he drives, and I don't know what it's called, but I think it's more of a GT spec car. So it's a production-based car. The other ones are all prototype-looking stuff. And, they got to have a pro driver. They got to have a gold driver, I think is what Valentino is, and they have to have a bronze driver. And the bronze is the guy that qualifies the car. Bronze is the guy that's got to start the race. So a lot of it depends on, have you fudged the rules and got a driver that's just a bronze? Oh, no. He's just new and up and coming and inexperienced that's really, really fast and really good. Because if that's the case, you qualify at the front. Typically, you race about where you qualify. So
you're only as strong as your weakest guy.
That's exactly it.
We talked to Larry Pegram a little bit about this, Ben Spies a little bit about this. They've done some car racing. You've done car racing. Is it weird for a motorcycle racer to race in a car? Because if you can't make the car do what you can on a bike, and you still want to lean maybe a little bit.
Yeah, and when I first got in the car, I had bruised knees because I'd try and throw my knee out when I got to a corner, no matter whether I was having to clutch and downshift and brake at the same time. It's as a motorcycle racer, you can do different things on the motorcycle. You can slide further forward on the bike. You can stay further back. You can get more on top of the bike. You can come up with a way to overcome a lot of the inadequacies that a motorcycle might be having setup-wise for you at the time. You can't do it all the time, but you can do it for a lap or two. And, I think that's one of the most rewarding things about motorcycle racing is, it started off, I went from the front to the back and then went back to the front to win the race. And the bike went from horrible to better. And I reacted to all those situations and scenarios. So, cars are fun. And I think the more sportier a car gets, like a hypercar or like a Formula One car, an Indy car, something that's back on razor's edge like a MotoGP bike or a World Superbike might be. I bet it's really, really satisfying to drive one of those, get it set up right, and run one near the front of a race.
Okay, you're just coming off some shoulder surgery that I know has had you not bedridden, of course, but you've had to lay a little bit low because of it. So is your left shoulder, and you're thinking about getting your right shoulder done because the left shoulder now feels so good. Is that a case of just a career of racing and falling down, or is it one specific crash that did what you've got going?
Well, make sure not play this until after October so I can break the news to the doctor, because he's like, well, no, we're not doing the other one right away. No, it's this particular left shoulder was a big crash at Donington, and I think it was 94. Yeah, 94.
Was that the doing big?
No, that was 93 when he took me out, which didn't hurt my shoulder, but it was
just hurt your pocket.
Yeah, hurt my pocket and my pride. It was 94 qualifying, old hairpin out of the straight up in the air, and then Bruno Bonhill comes by and clips me and turns. I'm spinning one direction. He comes by, and as he grabs the front brake, he comes off the inside of his motorcycle and drags beside it for a little while before he gets back on it. So I got up, and I was like, I remember thinking to myself, my shoulder hurt. I mean, I've been hurt a lot, but my shoulder hurts worse than any injury I've ever had. I won't be surprised if they have to cut the thing off. They have to amputate. Wow. And I'm walking, not walking like that, but I'm walking slumped over, off into the grass. And right at that point, the track at Donington starts to go up to Bridge and then to not Clearways, but McLean's. And so there's a bit of elevation. And as I walked over to the edge, I was like, oh, and I turned and just went flat on my back, kind of to my butt, and then flat on my back. And it must have popped the shoulder back in place. Wow. Because by the time I get in the ambulance or get on a scooter and get to the medical center, I never once complained about my shoulder. I mean, I had 2 hands in casts at the time as well, so I had plenty of stuff to be that they could work on and look at, but I don't remember ever saying anything about my shoulder. And the other times that I've dislocated that shoulder since, it's amazing how bad it hurts, and then just get it to go back. It's like just complete. You can't believe how much pain there is for how easy of a fix it is to get it to go back in. And so much that the last time I dislocated it at my house in Austin, I was doing laundry and I had a hurt foot. So I was pushing one of those little stupid scooters around so that I didn't put any weight on my right foot. Well, of course, I crashed the scooter, didn't I? And just as my face is about to hit the floor, I get my left hand in front. Dink, shoulder pops out. I get I scoot on the ground, get to my phone. Doctor says, you're just going to have to try and put it back in yourself. So I do what he said, and it goes back in. I was like, oh, my God, it's amazing. And what did I do? I tested it. I went like that. It popped back out. I had to do it a second time. Oh. So, once they come out, they say that first, when you dislocate it the first time, if it's not properly put back in, it just goes back in on its own. Typically, most of the damage is already done at that point. So
you're a mess.
Yeah, pretty much. Always have been.
Do you think, I mean, you obviously had some big accidents and you had a lot of crashes. Do you think that, and it also seemed like you were always on a motorcycle that you had to override. Do you think that's the case, or do you think it's just you would have had the same no matter what?
You know, it's hard to say. Had Wayne ridden a Suzuki and Mr. Work on it. We got to make this thing better. Maybe I just, because I always felt like I got to a certain point in the weekend. I'm like, okay, we're not making any real big improvements. I've just got to figure out how to ride this thing. And it wasn't Sunday morning warm up when I did that. Typically it was Friday, Saturday afternoon, going from practice to qualifying. It's like, okay, just gonna have to, throw it out there and see what happens. But I mean, maybe somebody, having Chandler there in '92, I think helped a lot. He had a lot of ideas that Yamaha had, I think, that we implemented there at Suzuki, and it helped. But then immediately he left and went to Cagiva in '93. And I think had he stayed, he would have reaped the same benefits of all the hard work he and I both did in '92 to get that '93 bike to where we had it. So, having somebody with some more experience, somebody who'd been racing bikes for more than 6 or 8 years, like I had at that point, at least Grand Prix bikes or road racing, it was funny because they'd get people to come, young kids to come test the bike. And they say, oh, that bike, he went really fast. I'm like, well, how fast did he go? He was second and a half, almost 2 seconds off. But he said, the bike's incredible. I said, well, just remember this, guys. I said, in less than a half a second, it goes from being a bike that you love to ride to a bike that you absolutely hate and have no control over. It doesn't take a second and a half or 2 seconds for it to get bad. It's a half a second. That little half second is where it turns into a bag of, you know what?
That's funny.
So,
in a way.
So you talked about obviously some of the injuries you had, and majority of your career, not all of it, but a majority of your career in GP, of course, you were on a fire-breathing 500cc two-stroke. The bikes had no engine braking at all. So I don't think you ever had arm pump surgery, did you?
I didn't. Look at those arms.
I noticed.
You couldn't pump those up if you wanted to.
I'm looking. But did you ever have an issue with that?
I had numbness in my hands, but it was from carpal tunnel more than it was arm pump. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a little bit what Jake Gagne's dealing with too. Mm-hmm. He's got both of the issues, but carpal tunnel's really a big part of it. But yeah, that's got to be a weird feeling. You have no strength in your hands to grab the brake because it's numb.
No, the feeling of as your hand, and you can feel it. Your hands start to go numb. You're like, oh my God, here go the fingers. It's getting ready to happen. There's nothing you can do. The only thing you can do is take the hand off the bar and rest it. And if you watch some British Grand Prix from '94, the last Grand Prix I won, you'll see me taking my left hand off the bar, going in, braking into the last corner. Well, what you can't see is accelerating down the front straightaway. I go over with the left hand at that point and hold the throttle and shift second to third to fourth to get the right hand just a little bit of rest.
So it's both your hands. It was left and right.
At that, like I said, that was the race I crashed in qualifying, and I already had both hands in plaster.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
You get to where you can sense it coming on, and you can take preventative measures at that point to try and stop it getting any worse. if you just keep hanging on for dear life. I mean, I used to make myself tap the clutch and the brake lever to make sure that I stayed relaxed. And if not, even in a straight line, you do that, anybody's going to get arm palm.
Yeah, absolutely.
How close were you to ever changing manufacturers? I mean, I think when you look back at your career, you've got to be fairly pleased that you did stick with one manufacturer, because you and Suzuki kind of go hand in hand, and people think of you when they think of Suzuki and vice versa. But did you have any real opportunities to go someplace else?
I the biggest opportunity I had was at the end of the season in '89, and more I just wanted to ride what Wayne was riding than anything. Whether I thought the Yamaha was a better bike or the Honda was a better bike, I wanted to ride, and there happened to be Yamaha availability at Agostini. And I talked to Ago, and Ago's like, we'd love to have you come ride. I signed a letter of intent with Ago upon confirmation that Yamaha would say that, of course, he was going to have factory bikes the next year. That was the stumbling block. One of the Japanese from Yamaha called us and said, Kevin, we're honored that you would want to come ride our bikes, but right now we think racing's in a really good place. And so we just wanted to let you know that there won't be any factory support for Mr. Agostini's team, so you're probably better off staying where you are. It was at that point that I was convinced one big boss owned all the Japanese manufacturers, because it was obviously trying to. No, racing's in a good place. Honda's got their guys, Yamaha's got our guys, Suzuki's got you. Let's just leave everything.
Let's not wreck it.
Let's just leave everything be. Yeah.
Because Suzuki would have been in a bit of a.
I didn't talk to the person. My dad did, and my dad said he thought that Suzuki might stop racing if that happened.
Wow.
I don't think it would have quite been,
and
that extreme.
Sean, I don't know if you know it, but he would have actually ridden with my dad then.
Yeah, then it'd have been cool. Then it'd have had Kel.
We would have been in real trouble.
Yeah, we'd have had the world right where we needed it.
Oh, right, that was Ago's team with Kel.
Yeah,
your dad was on
Oh,
Ago's team. Yes, that's right. Wow.
We spent many. My parents in our motorhome. We spent many nights at the workshop in Bergamo.
Wow.
Whenever we were between races or going, we didn't know where exactly to go. I mean, '88 was the first season, so '89 was our second season. So we did some time in Bergamo. Ago and I see each other and still talk about it today.
So that was Eddie and Rob Mack.
Yeah.
Which one?
Rob Mack? No, Rob Mack. That would have been '80.
Oh,
that was before, because Rob Mack came to us in '88. So I think Rob Mack was there '86, '87.
It was Mackenzie then, right?
My teammate?
No. On Ago then.
Yeah. Who was on? Would you have been teammates with Eddie, or it would have been you would have been instead of Eddie?
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, because in the discussions we find out, talking to Doohan, and I don't really talk to Eddie, but
right.
You hear that Eddie was inquiring about the Suzuki, because Eddie in '89 was always bragging, "You guys don't worry about it. We get to Austria and we get to Germany. There's going to be a special lane for the Hondas." And I think he got beat by me in Austria, and he got beat by Wayne in Germany. So his Honda lane didn't pan out. He did win the championship that year, but
I got a different subject.
Go for it.
It's a little more forward. So this has kind of come around to talk to you a little bit about our Talent Cup we've got going next year with that whole thing. But I want to start by talking about what you did with Red Bull AMA US Rookies Cup. You think about our paddock now and all the riders that you worked with that are still in our paddock: Jake Gagne, Bryce Prince, Corey Alexander, Travis Wyman, Hayden Gillum. Hayden Gillum. And it's amazing that is proof of concept with what that did to prepare those riders not only to be racers, but to ride proper bikes, and those KTMs were. So talk about that time period and how you feel about that kind of a motorcycle versus a production motorcycle to get a kid on, and what we're trying to do next year with the Talent Cup. It's a big question for you.
And it's a big ask to try and do something like Rookies Cup, but it was great. I got to ride with the kids. I go ride the first practice, sometimes the second practice. If we had a group of kids that maybe struggled at a new track, most of the tracks I had been to. But into the first session, half of them were faster than me. By the end of the second session, almost all of them were faster. If not, I was spending lots of time with the kids that weren't. But it was for me, for you to learn on a 250 two-stroke, 125 two-stroke at the time. It just reeked Grand Prix racing. I mean, it gave you that two-stroke, light, not a lot of power, corner speed. Don't slow it down too much because you're never going to get it back going again. Roll through the corner, the center of the corner faster. It just teaches you everything that you really need to know. That sometimes on a production bike, you get something that's got a little more torque. It's got a little bit of this, a little bit. You can get away with doing stuff that's not maybe the way it should be done. Not the best possible way to do it. But for me, it was great. I had kids from 9 to 5, and then I gave them back. It was
right.
Like I didn't have to deal with them at night or in the morning, but I had them when their attention was 100% focused on how do I go faster? How do I be better? I want to do what you did. And I mean, the kids would just sit down and just soak it up.
Yeah.
And, we went to the 09 selection. We did selection at the end of 08 for 09, selected the kids. I called the kids, told them who had gotten chosen.
Wow.
And then they called us and said, we're not doing it. I was like, well, you get to call the kids and tell
Right.
them we're not doing it, because I enjoyed making that first phone call. This second phone call is going to be hard to make.
Yeah.
And, I'm sure Red Bull had their reasons. And, it's what they do at MotoGP Rookies Cup is truly amazing. And, I mean, just watch that list of kids that are there now. In 5 years, they'll be
Right.
littered between Moto3, Moto2, and MotoGP.
So it's got to be pretty satisfying for you to look at our paddock now, and all these kids are the ones that are doing it. And you talk about like Jake Gagne. I don't even think he ever road raced before he joined that program, did he?
He didn't.
He'd gone and ridden some supermoto to try and get used to pavement, but
Okay.
otherwise he was motocross.
Yeah.
And he was a fairly easy choice of a kid that hadn't had much experience on pavement and showed such improvement from first day to last day. You're like, no, the way that kid's gone up the timesheets, absolutely he's a fit.
Yeah.
Hayden, Matthew, all of them. And then in 09 and 010, I had a contract with Red Bull for 08, 09, and 010, or 08, 09, and 10. So I said, well, guys, you're not going to have a series in America, but we've got a contract for 3 years, so I'm going to go to as many races in Europe that don't conflict with the AMA Superbike Series as I can, because my first commitment was to Rookies Cup and then to Suzuki in the U.S. And when Rookies Cup didn't happen in the U.S., I stayed and did stuff with Suzuki here in America, but still traveled to probably, I don't know if they did 6 or 8 Rookies Cup races that year. I did over half of them. So I worked with a bunch of the kids in Europe, 09 and 10 as well. So, and it's funny walking through the paddock. You're like, hey, yeah.
It's amazing.
It's amazing how many of them are still around.
Yeah. So sorry, Paul. I want to spin it forward to what we're doing with our Talent Cup. These Kramer bikes. I don't know if you know much about them, but the KTM 350, it's a 4-stroke engine, not a 2-stroke, but it's supposed to be a lot stiffer, a lot more proper, a lot more adjustability in the headstock and things like that. This is supposed to be what is going to lead to, MotoGP, but it also is going to help in other classes as well. This is kind of what I think Wayne and Chuck wanted to do in the beginning and didn't. We ended up having production bikes. The difference between these production bikes and these Kramers that we're talking about, do you have good understanding of that, or related to what you did in Red Bull?
I don't know that much about the Kramer. Of course, I've read the press release and stuff.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting, really interesting to ride them, have kids get on them, see what they think of them. I'm sure they've done a lot of testing for Wayne and the crew here at MotoAmerica to commit to something like that. It's got to be a pretty good platform. Adjustability. One thing I think is maybe they do so well at Rookies Cup is, here's the bike, you got suspension settings is all you get. They don't let it get too complicated, and I think that keeps the racing a lot closer as well.
Right.
Somebody's going to get it right. Some couple, a team or two are going to figure it out, and it's going to just humiliate the rest of the field. But over time it'll get better and better and better, and the racing should be great. My concern is Milwaukee 250s we had at school. That magic mark of about 20 hours was all a motocross engine at that point could stand. I just hope they've done a lot of testing and a lot of development with getting some longevity out of it.
The KTM 125s that you had in Red Bull AMA Rookies Cup, USA Rookies Cup, and obviously Rookies Cup back then around the world, they didn't adjust the bikes too much, right?
Suspension. I mean, you could mess with suspension was all you could do. You could change your handlebar position, and you could adjust the front and the rear suspension. I don't think you were even allowed to change springs. You just had to go preload and dampening front and rear. With a little bit of rear adjustment, you could get a little bit of change in the ride height. But it was pretty basic. And their attempt was, well, in the beginning, just mechanics, specific mechanics or people that the kid wanted as a mechanic. Some of them ended up being dads, which ended up being a little more trouble than it was worth. And I think what they've done now is they've just gone mechanics. Everybody, you randomly pick your mechanic.
Yeah.
Or your mechanic gets sent to you. However that process happens, I'm not sure. But and sometimes, if you've been working with and not to say dad's the bad person or the wrong person for it, but you've been doing something with your dad the same way, and it's been working. But now we've got to this level, and it's not. Some new ideas, some different settings in the bike, maybe some different feedback from the rider. Maybe makes him even that much better. So I think they've thought the process through pretty thoroughly.
Yeah, but that's the thing. That's the big unknown I'm wondering about next year is the fact that there is more adjustability, and there are going to be some dads with their kid. I want to make sure. I hope they don't get lost in the minutia, Kevin. That there's too much to mess with. Just like I hope they have a baseline and somehow some people that are advising them on what to do.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to. Forget who it was, but somebody said I sure hope there's a handful of people from Kramer here to help and to advise and to give ideas of, hey, we've tried this and we've done this and here's what's recommended when we're having this issue, something like that to help shorten that learning period, because a dad and his son as a team are probably going to struggle, because I'm sure there's going to be some teams that see this as a real opportunity to get in and start developing those young kids. And they do it at a pretty high level, and it's going to be tough for the mom and pop operations.
Yeah, and to that point, we've been told by Jensen Beeler, who's the one in charge of that whole thing, they are going to have some people involved there, so that is going to help them.
Good.
Yeah, that'll help.
And a semi full of parts.
Yeah, a semi full of parts. Yeah.
So you didn't necessarily spend any time on those sort of bikes when you were young. I think you mostly rode like ill-handling super bikes pretty quick. But back then, I think an ill-handling super bike translated well to a 500 two-stroke.
Well, and
so times have changed, and they kind of do need this kind of bike, I think.
Yeah, I mean, something that's going to wallow around underneath you a little bit. It's going to be a Grand Prix bike as you get to the second half of the race. Back tire's loose. It's moving around. The front's pushing back on you a little bit. All those things, a production-based bike, I think, helped with. That and riding so many other forms of motorcycles. You can't, I think you find it hard unless you're, now you got so many opportunities as a young kid to get on an Ovale and ride it at a young age. 50cc Ovales, they're racing those, all the way up to the 160s and 190s. All that kind of stuff is leading kids into not being on the dirt much. Mm-hmm. And you back up and look at Kenny and Wayne and Eddie and myself and Randy. Dirt track was one of the things we did as a young kid. Maybe not on a proper dirt track or just on our mini bikes to start with, and then advanced up into some more some more dirt track specific type motorcycles. But the feeling of something moving around underneath you is a good thing, because it's not always going to be right, and that's one of the things you got to remember as a kid. Don't just throw your hands up when the front starts to push a little bit or the back starts to slide. Remember, as a rider, you can move your weight around on the motorcycle to try and help issues that you're having in each and every race or practice session out there. So it's rough tracks, bumpy tracks. lay claim to Texas World Speedway as my home track. And, you know, we had cracks in the banking that you had to remember when you're going around. Don't hit that crack because the front wheel will fall right in it. And who knows what would happen if that happened.
Right.
Wow.
And bumps, you know, the transition off at turn 1 was almost a 90. You had to come sloping down it and kind of up and then get back down. You know, riding on tracks that aren't perfect, I think makes you a better rider, racer especially. You know, in so many places now, this track's getting too rough. Was just resurfaced 3 years ago. COTA's an exception. I mean, yeah, we know we have issues a little bit with the surface here, but I mean, everywhere. I heard them talk. One of the last big arguments I had with anybody in Grand Prix racing was Franco. And Franco and Cini told me what I felt around here on the GSX-R 1000 was completely irrelevant because it was at a pace that was not MotoGP pace. And I said, Franco, those bumps are still the same.
Right.
You know, and good guys will realize that there's a big, huge dip inside it too. And if you slide that apex out about a foot, you almost miss it. It's still there, but it's not huge. Good guys find the way around, fast way around.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit before we got started on the show that it looks like you're going to maybe have a go at some off-road truck racing.
Wow.
Is it just a thing that like you just want to race shit? I mean, it's like you've raced your whole life and now you're a retired old guy and you figure you can go race a truck.
Yeah, and my buddy Rick Johnson says, with age comes a cage. So
That's pretty good. That's good.
Yeah, and of course, when I called him and told him I bought one, he's like, Rick's like, why didn't you call me? I could have told you this. And then he did some research. He goes, yeah, you got a good truck. So, yeah, and it's just something to do. You know, a friend of mine, C.R. Gittery, had a truck. We went out to test it. He goes, come on, I'll take you for a ride. I went for a ride, and then he said, you want to drive it? And I said, no, I do not want to drive it. His wife went out. He took some more people out. End of the day, he comes back and he says, okay, we're about to load it up. You sure you don't want to drive it? I was like, okay, I'll drive it. Well, the reason I didn't want to drive it was because I knew I'd buy one if I drove it.
Yeah.
And I went out and I came back in. I was like, dude, tell me where the next one of these, it's not rolling off the line that's $450,000. Where can I buy one that's maybe got a little time on it and I can get my feet wet and see if this is something that I like? You know, it's still going to be racing, and I'm sure, you know, when you go down with the shield, it's going to be Mr. Angry again, which, you know, maybe isn't a bad thing, but you know, I'm going to go try it, test it, see how much fun I have it. I've got a buddy here in Austin that says if I don't like it, he says he's happy to buy it from me because he wants to race one. So.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
So is that something you can do locally, or is it, where do you have to go for that?
No, the truck lives in Vegas.
Okay.
CR's got a shop out there, and it lives there. He's got a mechanic. He was gone. JR and Rocket were here, my buddies from Australia, for the Grand Prix, and we went out after the Grand Prix and got to go test the truck, I didn't get to drive the truck because I was already not surgery yet, but I'd realized that really driving one of those things, I guess you put one of those knobs on it, you could do it one-handed. Anyway, we went out and rode in it and, you know, had just as much fun as I did when I drove it. So maybe I'm a passenger, not a driver, but yeah,
that would be hard, I think.
Yeah. I always watch rally racing, and how do the guys navigate?
No idea.
I'd get sick watching the video, much less being in the car.
Well, when you're in a truck, I mean, compared to road racing, it's bone jarring, right? In those things, you're up and down all the time.
They've got pretty good suspension, but yeah,
Okay.
you still get some pretty big hits.
Yeah. Wow. All right, I've got a question for Paul. I've got a question for Kevin. There's a little flow chart in my brain on this, but yeah, we're gonna get there. Okay, this is my only connection was Red Bull Rookies Cup. Joey Pasquarella was one of your riders. Joey won a Daytona 200, and then we never saw him again. But you know, he won that 200, and I had heard this legend about the bike that he raced in that, and that bike apparently parts of that bike won about 3 more Daytona 200s after that. My connection to that is, and you're saying, where are you going with this, Sean? Okay, here's where I'm going with this. So when we were at COTA earlier this year, and Kenny Roberts Jr. has his RGV in Barber. Okay, I heard that there are parts of your bike in that motorcycle. Possibly a crankcase. I don't know.
Yeah.
All those years later.
You know, if anybody could tell you, it'd be Kenny Jr.
He told me that.
Yeah.
Oh,
If he told you, I mean, he used to. I see him and he just starts on. Hey, do you remember what firing order ran? What the V of the what the degree of the V was? I was like, no idea. It was a 2-stroke 500. I got on it and rode it. Each year, if it changed, I told them what I felt different as far as power delivery, better, worse. But no, as far as the specifics and geometry and what firing order it was exactly, and I have no idea. I mean, I was confused enough just trying to figure out how to get around the track without making mistakes.
I mean, I just can't even believe though that 94 to 2000, there's a lot of development time, and those are prototype bikes. It's amazing to me that there were some aspects of your motorcycle, even the engine, that were somehow part of what Kenny. And maybe it wasn't the 2000, maybe it was one of the bikes he rode, but there was enough time that went by. It kind of surprises me that there was some of your stuff in there.
Either that or it was really, really good in 93. And
That's what
they
I'm
didn't find
wondering.
any way to improve it. It's funny because in 93, it was very, very reliable. In 94, it was still good. In 95, kind of Daryl Beatty's demise was twisting crankshafts and throwing him down the road. And I think they determined a lot of that was the first downshift Daryl made from wide open top gear was a downshift. And then he'd close the throttle and maybe use the clutch. And I think that's what was kind of having that ill effect on the crank. But, I mean, they did go through some teething issues after I quit racing. So I would have thought they'd have had to make some changes. But like I said, if Junior said it, I'd especially about the engineering of the bike, he's probably spot on.
Yeah,
Did I make that valid enough of what?
No,
yeah, you did okay.
No, you did. I mean, I kind of put you on the spot, Kevin. But when I heard that, I was like amazed that in the world of prototype, things like that.
I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that he does know something about that, but nothing else. That's what I was trying to get across.
Okay, now that you've talked about that, I can't remember this. Did you have a Big Bang engine?
Yeah, 92 they came out.
Okay.
When they started.
Was it a Big Bang in 93, 94? And did
I
Kenny?
don't think they ever went in, I don't think they ever came back from that.
Right.
I think they stayed.
And that's what Kenny probably.
It's probably slight variations of whatever that magic firing order
Okay.
that Junior likes to talk about.
Right. Yeah, the magic firing order. No, that's great. Thank you for answering
Sure.
that. I've been wanting to ask you that one.
I don't know what else we've got here. Oh, you know what I did want to talk about was it's very cool about Mick Doohan's kid, right? I mean, think of, I don't know what the money spend would be to get to that point, but it's got to be pretty hefty. But
I haven't. Did something just recently come?
oh no, he's Formula One.
Yeah, he's test driver at Alpine.
No, he's actually a driver, isn't he?
Is he? I don't know.
Oh, I thought he was actually a driver. But either way, he's in.
I didn't see his name at the last Grand Prix, but I also
No, it's for next year. Yeah.
So maybe he's testing at Alpine right now, but is he staying at Alpine?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome.
Yeah, he's going to be one of the drivers.
We're going. Me and some friends are going to Motocross the Nations, and we're going to get into England on Thursday morning. Friday's kind of a whatever at the track, but Saturday, Sunday's racing for Motocross the Nations. So I've talked to Mick and Dario Franchitti and Mark Webber and asked them, you guys, can you get us in to see an F1 shop? We'd love to go visit. Now I've got to go back and retaliate and say, which one's closest? That's the one we want to go. We don't want to have to drive too far.
Right.
So I tried to call Franchitti this morning just to get his take on it. But, yeah.
Fun.
Okay, I got two for you. Okay, Goodwood. You've been there a bunch lately. Well, is it amazing? Is it incredible to be walking around there and see all that?
Not with your shoulder in a sling.
Well,
and
yeah.
actually, the fun part about Goodwood is everybody that's there. I mean, when you see, I got a picture with Giacomo Agostini and Jackie Stewart. It's like
Crazy.
What?
Nigel Mansell, it's like,
yeah. It's the people that you see there. It's just amazing. The cars that get driven, the motorcycles that get ridden. It's amazing. But as a rider, it's such a pain because you get to go into to the changing room, and then you get to go sit in the parc fermé for 30 minutes. And then you get to go down the driveway and sit another 30 minutes while everybody gets from the parc fermé down. At that point, then you get to turn and ride 2.5 miles up. And you get to wait another 30 minutes at the top for everybody to get up and all the support to get up so that all the cars and bikes can make it back down. It's a big, long, drawn-out process, and you're never going to go fast on the driveway on a motorcycle anyway. You can do it in a car, but I mean, there's old cars leaking oil. There's new cars leaking, radiator fluid. There's old bikes leaking oil. There's new bikes leaking radiator coolant. So there's no chance you'd ever try and go fast. And it's just kind of a wave. It's twisty enough that you can just find a couple spots to do wheelies if you want.
Is the surface pretty smooth?
I don't know that I've ever gone up it fast enough to notice.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, what's the isn't there? Or I remember you used to race like Manx Norton's on a track.
There's the Festival of Speed, which is all sponsor, manufacturers, modern day stuff. Revival is old. Everything there's not a modern vendor there. It's all old stuff and old cars and old bikes. Everybody dresses in vintage clothing. It's the Revival is a super fun event, and they are. You race them on a track that's on the back.
Yeah, because I remember seeing you like on a Manx Norton or something, right?
I've crashed a Manx Norton there too. But yeah, it's the Revival. If you want to go watch some racing, the guys racing those old E-types and stuff just up sideways everywhere. It's a pretty special event, and it's 3 days of just nonstop. So from a rider standpoint, Revival's better. Goodwood's Festival of Speed's more work. But I think if you go to the Festival of Speed, there's a lot better chance you're going to get an invite to the Revival.
Right.
Okay, one more for me. The Schwantz School. It was a period of time in people's lives, and it was so well known.
I'm a graduate.
The branding. I did Keith's code school, never did the Schwantz School, and regret it all the time.
You're probably still not a very safe rider then, huh?
No. Because Keith wouldn't let us use the brakes. That's what used to drive me crazy. Okay, but that was you had a lot of students go through there. It was a very well run program. The branding was so cool on it. It was awesome. Just a time in your life you wouldn't go back to that at this point.
It was here's how it all happened. I quit racing in 95, and I took 5 years. I was like, I don't want to see a motorcycle. I want to read a publication about motorcycles. Nothing to do with them. They've been a part of my life for the first 30 years, and I just need a break. Went and drove some cars, bought part of a car team, wasted a bunch of money, so on and so forth, like you do in something with motorsports. And then Pegram called me and asked me to come help him work when he was going to get a chance to ride at Faraci. I said, sure, I'd love to come do that. Not all the races, went to a few of them. Well, of course, then Suzuki's doing a new model intro at Road Atlanta, so we go to that into 2000 for a 2001 GSX-R 1000 launch. At that same time, all the manufacturers had gotten called to DC and got told that if they didn't put in classes for military people that wanted to buy motorcycles, that they were going to quit letting military men and women buy motorcycles.
And that's a big market.
And that's a huge part of the market. So, of course, Suzuki said, Kevin, here, this would be great for you, da-da-da-da-da. And it was. I mean, it was something we loved, something I dearly enjoyed going to. You get to hang out with Michael Martin and Opie Kaler and Britt Turkington and Lee Acree and John Jacoby and Ruben Franken. I mean, the whole gang, everybody Harry Vanderland. I mean, all those guys, every school. We go there, we get the bikes out. Trey Beatty. Trey was the mechanic on the stuff, which meant we had the most meticulously prepared motorcycles anywhere known to mankind. I mean, Trey was just a fanatic about everything. But then, of course, we get there. Okay, we got a break. Need to scrub new tires in. Well, scrubbing new tires in typically turned into probably a Twins Cup race on our SVs, or if it was 600s or 750s. And it was fun. We did schools all over Europe. We did schools in Japan. It was so fun. I mean, the best example I have is a student that came in when he came walking up first morning. I was like, hey, how you doing? And he just kind of went on by. So a couple times during the day, I checked on him. Hey, how you doing? And just no response whatsoever. Second day, second morning, nothing. End of the second day, finally walks up to me at the end of the school and says, hey, he says, Kevin, he says, I really want to apologize. I haven't been very nice to you over these past couple of days. He says, but I got this school as a gift. My wife gave it to me. He goes, I didn't think I needed a school. He goes, now that I've come, now that I've ridden, it's probably going to have saved my life.
Yeah.
So I interpret that into, he said, come on, honey, let's go for a motorcycle ride. She got on the back, thought she might die, and said, honey, how about this? You go to a school before I ever get back on the back of a bike with you. Anyway, just stories like that of,
it's a legacy that you got to be proud of.
Guy telling me, Kevin, I just can't figure these corners out, but I'm good in a straight line. Well, okay.
You'll go far.
Yeah. Anyway, it's nothing but great memories of it.
Yeah.
Michael and I were talking the other night. I crashed a motorcycle there, and when I crashed it, it was a really, really big crash at Road Atlanta. First turn, that must have been the length of this room off in the first turn too deep. Wow. So I just immediately had to get off the side of the bike, pull the bike down, and it attempted to go through the big Chevy bow tie billboard at the end of the front straightaway. So I got up and walked back into the classroom, and there'd been a fall or two in the first couple of sessions. Anyway, Michael was doing the classroom stuff. And as I walked back in, Michael you could see, and then he realized that I was all covered in dust and that I was the one that had just crashed, and it wasn't the student.
Oh,
He's
man.
like, hold on. I'll be right back.
Wow.
He came over. We talked a little bit. But, the phone call to Mel Harris, rest in peace, my buddy Mel. I called him. I said, Mel, I got to tell you, I crashed a bike this morning. He's like, well, Kevin, are you okay? I was like, yeah. He says, how long have you had that school now? And I said, it's been 6 years. He says, and that's the first bike you crashed? You're getting better.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
That is good.
I thought it would be 6 months.
Yeah. Are there any riders right now in our paddock that you're working with, or that you can even say? You don't have to name anybody, but
no.
Okay. Because I know you're always behind the scenes. Man, I remember, I got to tell this story, Paul. I got to tell this story real quick. Kevin,
it's not going to be real quick.
No, it's a little bit about me, and I don't like to do that, but I want to tell you this. When I was working with Yamaha, and you were with Yosh at the time, and you were working with Blake Young and all that, I was standing on the tailgate at Yamaha's tailgate at Road Atlanta, and here comes Kevin Schwantz walking by, and I'm looking at him, and he diverted his path, came over to me, shook hands with me.
He thought you were someone else.
Well, I don't care.
No, I'm kidding.
He must have been standing close to Keith McCarty, and I was looking for an opportunity to punch him, probably.
I'll never forget when Keith got mad at me at that Wayne party. I spent a lot of time talking to you at Wayne's party that night. Keith told me later, what are you talking to Kevin Schwantz all the time? Okay, he's a good guy. He's got some good stories. So, but no, Kevin, listen, I appreciated the fact that you did that. I'm right there in Yamaha's, and you came over and said hi to me. It was so nice.
Got time for everybody.
Yeah, you do. And that's what I wanted to say.
Especially when I wasn't racing.
Yes.
And I have people come, you were so nice to me when you were racing. I'm like, yeah, you must have got lucky.
No, you were pretty good when you raced. I never noticed a difference.
Yeah.
Anyway, I wanted to share that. I mean, I think we're out of time now, but Kevin, thank you for being on. I mean, it's great to have you. We're going to put this one in the can and run it a little bit later, but I'm glad you're here. You going to stick around this weekend and watch some racing? I plan on being here all day tomorrow. I've got kind of a busy schedule today. I got to go back to the doctor to see what he's going to tell me about my shoulder and when I can start motorcycle or bicycle riding again. Yeah, and truck racing.
Yeah. I got to get out. Oh, I fished yesterday.
And fishing.
He fishes a lot.
It didn't stop me fishing.
I
actually did some catching yesterday, too. It was fun.
That's good stuff.
So we're coming up on podcast number 300. I don't know which one it'll be.
We're
but
close.
He was on 84, I looked today. So
it's been a while.
June of 2020 was the last time he was on.
Yeah.
And that would have been on the phone.
Yeah, it was completely different. To be on with you and see your face is much better for us. So
I don't know about that.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. Thanks, guys, for tuning in, and thank
Yeah.
you, Kevin, for being with us.
Thank you.
Thanks.